Hello everyone. Here I wanna talking about chapter 8. I hope you can enjoy for watching in this video and happy watching. Culture as text, narrative and hermeneutic. Today, it is a commonplace to observe that culture or social life is a text and that it has to be interpreted for some perspective. However, this dictum is more asymmetric than for others, and attention to the story-like qualities of social life is perhaps strongest in just theoretical approaches. They are conquered with narrative and hermeneutic. In this chapter, we focus on this. We began by introducing some theoretical tools for interpreting story and genre frames. Before going on to look at the ways in which narrative analysis has been applied to the social life, we conclude by looking at the challenge put forward by hermeneutic. Structuralist poetics. That approach, as we show, centered on the analysis of the paradigmatic dimension of culture and took as its central tool the analysis of binary opposition. When Levi-Strauss looked at the Oedipus myth, for example, he had a little interest in the story as the bearer of meaning. Rather, his primary concern was with the way the concept could be plucked out of the narrative to uncover an underlying structure. Another significant current in structuralism, however, has been concerned with the investigation of narrative and the ways it is sustained by the sequential organization of sign. Roland Barthes asserted that we need to study syntagm as well as system and in as y z about explaining how one particular story works. And the pleasure of the text. When structuralists approach the analysis of narrative, especially conventional story and literary, their activity is often given the name of structuralist poetics. The central theme here is often not so much binary opposition, but rather plot, character, and genre. Within this tradition, the work of Russian folklorist Vladimir Propp hold a canonical position, especially within the fields of literary criticism and folklore studies. Vladimir Propp. Vladimir Propp can be considered a true pioneer in the structuralist analysis of culture. He noted certain similarities in the structure of the hundreds of tales he examined. Even though the character and previous event would vary from one to another, Propp argued that each narrative was made up of what he called function. These were elements of a story or plot made up from the action of a character. Propp claimed that there were never more than 31 functions in a tale and more importantly, that they always appeared in the same order. Northrop Frye. Since the 1950s, the work of the Canadian theorist Northrop Frye has constituted the most ambitious attempt at constructing such a synthetic model. In Anatomy of Criticism, Frye attempted to organize the whole of literature into a coherent framework or classification. The point of this was to move beyond the ethical and moralist criticism of his era, which confused formal analysis with judgment about A good or bad writing are the human values of the author. Fry drew in part on Aristotle's Poetics and suggests that structured relationship link character, plot, and narrative genre over all forms of literature. Narrative and social process. For the most part, the analysis of narrative has been an activity of literary theorists interested in the study of text. The field has a lot to say about culture, context, and with its robust and structural models. It provides a basis for theorizing the autonomy of cultural forms. It also has quite a bit to say about agency in the reader and author, yet it has almost nothing to say about how narrative inter, intersect say about how narrative intersect Yet it has almost nothing to say about how narrative intersects with broader social life. However, another more sociological literature on narrative, and broadly speaking, we can detect three core themes. 1. Study of genre and audience. The focus here tends to be on literary, media, or artistic products, which have identifiable creator and consumers. Such study often highlight process of negotiation and interpretation that take place within defined social and historical contexts or the role of mediating institution and historical context or the role of mediating institution. Number 2. Exploration of narrative in qualitative methodology. It is often argued that social research need to retrieve researchers need to retrieve the forgotten voice and story that have been excluded by positivists. Mainstream social research, while important and interesting, this approach tends to be more concerned with the research process and epistemology than with theorizing narrative forms or their social impact. For this reason, it is not covered any further here. 3. Studies of the narrative aspect of social and political life. Investigation here think of social and historical events as being shaped by discourse and point out these often have narrative dimensions. This is because people and institutions generate stories about the world in order to make sense of it. Hermeneutics. There are strong affinities between the hermeneutics tradition in social science and just advocating the centrality of narrative. Hermeneutic as an area is concerned with issues of meaning and mutual understanding. Traditionally, it has tended to be subjective, humanistic, individualistic, aesthetic, philosophical, and phenomenological in orientation. in the context of literary criticism. For example, it has been centrally concerned with theorizing whether the reader can recover of meaning. Can recover. It has been centrally concerned with theorizing whether the reader can recover the meanings and talk held by the author. Narrative theory, by contrast, has tended to be more objectivist in orientation. As we have seen in the first part of this chapter, there is a focus on the text, its form, structure, and social implication. With a no interest whatsoever in the subjective intention or mental state of the author. More recently, hermeneutic has taken on board lessons from structuralism, post-structuralism, and narrative theory, and so the boundaries between hermeneutic and other forms of culture inquiry have begun to be broken down. And last, about I discussed in this video, we can learn that culture is not only focused on art, but many other things that can be called culture, such a culture as a text. Hopefully, my explanation can be understood, and thank you for watching.